I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 39. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Happy May, everyone. Can you believe it's May? I cannot believe it's May. We are just cruising. This whole coronavirus quarantine it's like the new normal. It feels normal now. So when things open back up, it's going to be a shock to the system again. Okay, however, it is May, which is exciting. Beginning of the summer. I think there's a lot of things to look forward to. And the weather is getting nicer. It's just a really cool time of year. I hope you are feeling the same way. A few things in May that are coming up that you definitely need to know about. I have tied the bow on the details for the Results Masterclass. So here's the deal. It is called How to Trade Being Busy for Actual Results. And this is my jam. This is the stuff that I work on every day. I work with people on every day and ran like a lot of the daily accountability, ran some really thoughtful experiments in there with that group, and some of the results that came out of that are in this class. So it's going to be great. And it's essentially how to make sure that you're showing up every day, and not just for yourself and for your firm, but to be an example for the people, the team members that are around you and watching you, on how to be results oriented instead of just being busy, how to be a results creator inside of the firm instead of just a task crusher, right? Or someone that just likes to cross off a to-do list. Switching your focus to results helps you line everything up in a much smarter way. So I am teaching a class all about this, about how to approach your day-to-day, but also how to plan. So come on over, sign up for the class. It's going to be great. velocitywork.com/results will take you there. It's going to be on May 20th at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, and 12 p.m. Pacific. So don't miss out. I put some copy on the page that says a Zero Fluff Masterclass. And I had a participant recently of the Daily Accountability Challenge. I had them look at the page and see if, anything stood out. Did it make sense to them? And he was like, well, what does Zero Fluff Masterclass mean? And I was like, oh, that's a good question. I said, I guess I'm just trying to get the point across that, this isn't the typical webinar that you probably sign up for that I know that you guys have experienced before, where you get on and there's this long drawn out intro that you don't really care about. And then there's a little bit of good content, but it's really to most of it is to lead you to this long pitch at the end. And even if the pitch is enticing and it feels great, all of that, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that method, especially if there's value provided, but I don't like it. And I don't want you guys to have to sit through that either. So this, I guess what I mean by zero fluff is we're going to get on, we're going to get to it. If you want to know more about me, my background, I will give you a link to go look at that. But just let's get to the content. And then at the end, sure, at the very end, there will be something if you want to work with me basically on implementing what I'm teaching, you can totally do that. But you've got everything from the class. You can just go and implement on your own. So there is no reason not to show up for this, because if it makes you feel any better, I detest the typical webinar format. And it's really important to me to not just fall in line with that and actually offer you guys a lot of value and a lot of things you can walk away with from the webinar. It will stand on its own. That's important to me. So come on over, sign up. I think you guys will enjoy it, and it'll give you, I know for sure you will walk away with at least a nugget or two that will help you shift into a different mode, but maybe even more than that. So come on over and join us. The other thing I want to say is this week is Law Firm Autopilot's virtual boot camp is happening this week, starting on May 7th. So if you don't know about that, I interviewed Ernie Svensson, who is the master creator behind this. last week on the podcast. So listen to episode number 38. But if you don't know about this, I highly recommend that you listen to the episode, but go to velocitywork.com/virtualbc for bootcamp, virtualbc. And that will take you to the site where you can check out who the speakers are, what the topics are, just to see if you think it's worth it. But the price point is right. I will tell you that. And what's cool, so I'm a speaker in it. That's why I'm talking about it, because I think I wouldn't take part in it if I didn't think it was great. And the other thing that I think is really cool is that he's having the speakers on for a Q&A sort of in a couple of batches. And so you can talk to the speakers and ask questions. And then there's also some networking opportunities. So he really has done a good job of making this feel like an actual conference to the best of his ability. It was going to be a live conference. Can't be now for obvious reasons with COVID. But he's doing a really great job with everything. So check that out as well. Now to today's episode is Maddy Martin, who I just find to be such a joy. She's so kind and she's so real, but she's like zero fluff. I was talking about Zero Fluff Masterclass. This chick is zero fluff. And that is what I appreciate about her. You will hear how I met her and really why I liked her so much, just right off the bat and immediately. But I got to tell you, today it almost sounds like I'm pitching Smith AI. And let me just tell you, I'm not. I don't have an affiliation with Smith AI. I don't have, actually, she is giving a code to listeners, which is great. And you'll hear about that. But I want you guys to know that I just care a lot about high integrity services being offered to law firm owners, because there's a lot of services and a lot of providers out there and that don't, I just don't think that they're acting with the highest integrity that they could. And Smith AI does. And it's not to say that other virtual reception services don't, but what I think is cool about Smith AI is they have given themselves an edge because they leverage really high level customer service training with with all the receptionists and technology in this really beautiful way. And not just technology like the platform they use, but AI, like technology. And the people that built this company are the real deal. Like, came from Google, have worked it was CTO at Home Depot. You can read their backstory on their website, but they're not messing around. They are a tech company that happens to specialize in customer service. That is different than their competitors. So anyway, I asked her today on the podcast, you will hear her talk about, I really pushed her to know, because I want to know, I want to learn. Why should someone choose you? And some of my hunches were right, but she also shared some things that I didn't know. So I think you're going to enjoy today's episode with Maddy Martin as she kind of digs into answering the questions that I have for her. And the last thing I'll say here before you listen into the interview is one thing a point that she made that I don't know was stressed enough on the podcast, but I've thought a lot about it since we recorded this interview, is that people tend to sign up for things and just expect magic to happen. And what one of her points was, you have to be engaged in the process. They are your partner in the intake process. And the more that you look at them as a partner and you work with them to figure out what's best for your firm and to help them and to look at the data, and you will win. You come out on top. But if you sign up for their service and you do the bare ass minimum, and then you're wondering why Smith AI isn't the magic bullet that some people say it is, it's because of you. It's because of you. That's what I want to say. So, and it's not just Smith AI, it's anything. If you hire a coach, it's the same thing. If you hire a consultant, it's the same thing. If you are hiring a marketer, it's the same thing. You can't just hire someone and expect to pay them money and then produce magic for you and your firm, because you and your firm is unlike any other firm. And so it's a good lesson. And it was a good reminder that if you are going to sign up for something, you need to be engaged. And you can't just, even if they let you sit back, you should not sit back. You should lean in, lean forward, engage. And I just love that she made a point, and we didn't touch on it too much, but it's the truth. So whether you sign up for Smith AI or not, or whether you are using Smith AI or not, or just another service of any kind, ask yourself, like, really take ownership over the results that you're getting, and ask yourself how you can be more engaged to get the results that you want to get, and go from there. Now, if you do engage and you do lean forward and you work with them and you treat that service as like a partnership, and then it's like, yeah, this isn't worth it, then okay, then pull out, then stop. But at least like, you gave it your all, you engaged, and the results aren't what you're looking for. Okay, then you can make a decision. Okay, so I'm off my soapbox. Enjoy today's interview with Maddy Martin of Smith AI. Okay, so excited to have Maddy Martin on the show. Maddy, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Melissa. I'm happy to be here.
This is, this to me, well, I've been excited for this. We've been planning this for a bit. I met you last year at Max Law Con. So Max Law Con 2019.
Through Joey Vitale.
I didn't know you. Yes. I didn't know you, but one of the people I knew very well at that conference was Joey Vitale. And when I was watching all these presentations, there were a few that stood out that I was like, just I loved. And the reason I loved yours so much, and I don't even remember specifically what you were talking about, like that
referrals are not a growth strategy. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a very controversial
and
topic. That's sort of a a misdirect. Yeah.
Yes, totally. But I remember the reason I loved your talk so much was because I know how important tracking is, and how important it is to go on data and not hunches, and facts, not feelings, and I think there's a lot of discipline that is required to get some good tracking set up and going. And so many law firm owners don't actually do it. It's a great idea in their head. They totally agree with it. And maybe they build something, but they don't keep up with it, and they don't, whatever. So they don't always look at data and make decisions on data. So I loved your talk because I was like drooling, like the geek in me was coming out at like how your entire talk was based on data and information, and having the right information about what's going on inside your business. And I just don't think enough people were talking about that. There were a couple that were good, that brought in data and systems and processes and all that. But yours to me was like, it just outshined everyone else. So
thank you so much.
So that's how I knew you. And then Joey introduced me to you, and I totally had a girl crush on you already. And I was like, oh, Maddy Martin? That's amazing. And so I got to meet you. And then, so and I've just admired you from afar since then.
It's so mutual.
Oh, well, thanks. The clients that I've worked with since meeting you, some of them use Smith AI, some of them don't, and they use other services. And so, you have been with Smith AI for how long now?
3 years.
Okay, 3 years. And you are their global educator. Is that correct?
Yeah, head of growth and education, because they really go hand in hand.
Yeah. Okay. And I really wanted to talk with you about this, because sometimes what I notice is the clients use Smith AI, we don't have to talk much about their intake process during our quarterly retreats and all, like, it's pretty buttoned up. But I've had instances, and I don't know if it's coincidence, so I'm not bashing other companies out there, but I've had enough instances where there's quarterly retreats where the client is using a different service for their intake. So they're still outsourcing it, but there's problems. And so we have to spend time on that and like figuring out solutions in terms of like, what are they going to do about this? And that hasn't come up with anyone who's using Smith AI, which is awesome.
That's fantastic.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, you're well aware that there's competitors out there.
Sure.
Why I don't know the nitty gritty of why someone should choose Smith AI. So can you go into a little bit like what sets you apart from the competitors, and why should someone, even if you aren't the cheapest, right? Like I know people look at price and that's like their deciding factor. And I think that's a mistake. So I would love to hear from you why a law firm owner should be choosing Smith AI over some of the other services they could outsource to.
Sure, absolutely, and why they should outsource it, maybe even in the first place. And it really comes down to value, and it comes down to value. And we'll get back to my geekiness because I was an econ major, and I talk a lot about opportunity cost, which a lot of people don't have in their day-to-day vocabulary, but I seem to. And it's really about what is the value of a client, what is the value of your time, of your team's time. What does it mean to you to spend your time with qualified leads? And are you tracking the performance of your marketing campaigns, of your referrals, and the sort of velocity of those referrals? And a lot of that comes down to and drives the features and the products that we have established at Smith AI that stack on with the fantastic human beings that we have staffing the calls and the chats. So what we do for people who are not familiar with us is we are a virtual receptionist service. And we have always emphasized, to the degree that it is in our brand name, Smith AI, smith.ai is the website, is to focus on what is best suited with human involvement and what is best addressed by AI technology. And to me, when it comes to evaluating these services and comparing the cost and the results, what is the net benefit? It comes down to how much work can we take off your plate and how can we properly steer clients to you, or if they're not qualified, away from you to firms you recommend, and to have a meaningful enough conversation during the call where we're not getting into the weeds, into legal advice or matters or that are, getting into confidentiality, but we have enough of a conversation that drives the results that were opportunities presented in the Clio Legal Trends Report, where clients have said they need at the initial call, not just your responsiveness, but your attentiveness to their needs by sharing the expectations for cost and timing and fit and expectations of the workload and steering that conversation. So how do we put the best potential clients in touch with you? It's not about your, the age-old answering service. It's not about being some hardline sales driven, hair on fire sort of like, oh, get them to the conversion. Like we're not hardcore like that, right? We're just customer service professionals who have the technology in front of them at their fingertips to drive efficient, effective conversations that accurately provide the information clients are looking for, to screen and route the best potential clients to the attorney, so that when you have that conversation that absolutely we agree only you or your team should have, it is a meaningful, valuable use for your time. And that entire conversation then, that screening, that intake form is also logged in your systems. So we're not creating extra work for you. We're actually removing a significant amount of work from you. And I think the most relevant thing right now is how are we having that conversation across channels? So what we know is here we are in COVID times or whatever we're calling it, right? And people are spending more time on the screen than ever. They are spending like 60% more screen time. And what that means is that if you just have your phone set up to be answered, but not your website with chat, your web form fills called back, your text messages, your Facebook messages responded to, and maybe you're freaking out because you're thinking, I can't even handle the phone calls alone. That's why we take on all of that, because people deserve a response. If you open up those channels, if you have a Facebook page, they expect that if you maintain that page, it's a source and a point of which they can use to communicate with you. And if you don't, and you sort of say, shame on them, they should have come to my website, or they emailed me, they should have known to call. We see that all the time. That was another trend in the report. And that will lose you clients because we know, I'm just going to be blunt, like 2 out of 3 potential clients base their decision to hire on your initial responsiveness. And I don't mean you as in you, Melissa, or you, me, Maddy. I mean you as in your firm.
Yeah.
And what we know is that they don't know how great you are until they get in touch with you. And there are certain clients who should be put in touch with you and others who may not be the right fit. But if you don't pick up the phone, you'll never find out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. That is great. Okay, and maybe that's enough. So if I'm digging down a hole where you're like, I mean, you kind of already said it, then we can just keep on grooving onto something else. But, what arguments do you hear for not being chosen by law firm owners? Like, because I just think I have a hunch, and I want to give you a chance to prove it true, I guess. I have a hunch that you guys do it better than your competitors, period. And I because I don't have clients have issues with you guys. And I do have clients who have issues with other services. So, what are the reasons that people might be tempted to go with someone else, but they should reconsider?
So there are 2 things to unpack there. The first is absolutely you're right about cost, which you mentioned earlier. There are some services that are really, really cheap. Maybe they are, $1 or less a minute or something. I mean, it's really cheap, right? And they're all over the world. We are primarily North America based, and we sound like we're in house with you, right? But what we find is that people just say, oh, I read the Clio report and I know I need to be super responsive. Maddy, thank you so much for the advice. I'm just going to have like the cheapest possible way to respond. And the problem is, like, if you respond and you don't carry out that conversation to a point where a decision to move forward or not is made, and I'm just talking about new potential clients. Obviously, we can handle, helping you with calls for existing. But just to take these new clients, right? If you're basically just glorified voicemail, like having a friendly response and that can't do anything or answer any questions or help get you or steer that person and inform them enough to steer themselves, these are legal clients we're talking about. And we have 60% legal. So we know legal very well. We know if someone mentions, child custody or H-1B visas or all these different, terms that come up in legal conversations with new clients, like we know to identify that and if it's right for the firm. And the thing is, if you don't have any of that information, or you're disincentivizing yourself, honestly, by not giving them that information because it's going to make the call longer and you're paying per minute. So then by having a more productive call, you're actually costing yourself money, which if you think about it, like it really doesn't make sense.
No.
And it's also a way for people to feel like they're being taken advantage of. So on the other side, we have firms that come to us who say, yeah, I'm really glad that you charge per call because I was getting charged per minute and I was listening to some of these call recordings. Because if you use CallRail or services like that or your cloud phone system, you can record calls. We don't record them, but you can. The call recordings are like asking for the caller to repeat their name 3 times and spell it 3 times and confirm the phone number 2-3 times. And it's just like, your call doesn't need to be that long. And if it is that long, why aren't you actually progressing the conversation and saying, oh, yes, so child custody, absolutely. This is a family law firm. We're taking new clients. You're in the Boston area or you're in the Denver area. Wonderful. We do a, $100 Skype consultation and, let's get you booked for that. Done. So that you don't have a call back. You have a scheduled call with that person who also has it on their calendar. That's what I'm talking about. Don't even pay for voicemail. Like that doesn't make sense. And when it comes to the plans month to month, right now we know so much is changing. Teams are furloughed or at home or working hard on other important projects. You can't neglect these calls, but you also hate interruptions for other reasons. I mean, some of these companies are charging for time spent with like robocalls and spammers and salespeople. I mean, everyone's coming out of the woodwork right now, like to try and take advantage of people. We want to block those calls for you and not charge them. And that is peace of mind so that when your phone does ring, it's like a Pavlovian response. Like you get really excited because, Smith AI has already vetted it and screened it. And hopefully it's because you only told us to transfer the hot leads to you. Otherwise we're scheduling them for you. Right.
Yeah.
So you have to train, and it's habit building. And a lot of it is lack of comfort zone. Oh, I have a receptionist service so that I'm responsive, but I am not actually out of my comfort zone in order to hand off these intake tasks. And by the way, the second thing I wanted to mention is that the reason that Smith AI clients are so successful is because many of them are, savvy, and they've worked with others and they come to us. The second thing is our onboarding process is pretty rigorous. And I used to sort of argue with the team and say, can we make this easier? But there's a point at which you say, we don't want to make it easier. Like we want it to be somewhat requiring a conversation so that you have to talk to us. We build a relationship and we understand you, and we take what you're saying and we translate it into our system so that the receptionists know exactly how to handle what call and how. Because if you don't take that approach, we have clients who constantly will email and say, I have this update, or hold my calls, or don't disturb me at this time, or I have a new partner and her practice area is only, sliding scale, Social Security, disability, whatever. Like we have a lot of clients who, in working with us, dial in their systems. And we also have a strong community of people, like I'm just thinking about Regina Edwards, who has tried so many different systems and software, and they run their own Facebook groups, and they say, these are my recommended systems, and this is how Smith AI plugs into it, so that they can convey their entire workflow and start to talk about, this is your playbook for handing off those things in the top, in the middle of the funnel, before they retain, before they sign, before you have this rainmaking, conversation with them, where you're only having those conversations with the qualified leads who you want to work with, and that exercise is valuable. And I'm sure you talk about this a lot. Who's your target audience? How do we screen effectively for you and put the right people in touch with you? And who do you recommend for other firms if it's outside of your practice area? So you have a tree trunk, and one branch is good qualified leads. We know what to do with them. But this is my presentation at Max Law. Okay, so you've categorized all of this. How do you build your network? How do you bring in those referrals to you? It's the golden rule. Treat people the way that you want to be treated. All of those unqualified leads, you paid for them in some way to come and contact your firm. So if you're just saying, or instructing your receptionist to say, sorry, we don't do that. We don't do trademark. We don't do IP. We don't do criminal defense. We don't do personal injury, whatever. And then hang up. First of all, that could be a bad enough experience to warrant a negative review, which would be terrible and very hard to remove. Or it's just a missed opportunity to say, we do this. We are taking new clients. If you ever have a need for estate planning, then please contact our firm. We're here. We've been around for 20 years, whatever. But for your particular issue with DUI defense, whatever, we recommend so-and-so. And here's their name and number. And guess what? You don't have to send that email then that's like following up, we're not your law firm, all that stuff. You can basically eliminate that task from your plate. And you can even automate through us after the call like that, an email follow-up that says, just confirming, here are the firms that we recommend for multiple practice areas. And here's what we do, so you can contact us if you ever have a need. So
it's almost like you guys have, it's almost like you guys have thought so deeply about how to maximize opportunity in
our
other ways.
Us to do this. I mean, it's all collaborative. That's what I'm saying. That's why your clients are successful, because they collaborate with us. And the clients who are just paying for a service and see that bill as if it's the regular phone bill, like we're not your IVR. We are not your internet provider. We are more like a service partner to you than even though we're very software driven, than just a software company. Right. So if you approach it as, I'm just going to plug this in and forget about it, I'm not going to pay any attention to it. You miss a ton of
Mm-hmm.
value, and that value pays you back in free time for valuable work for your firm.
Yes, totally. Okay, I wanted to go back to something you said. You mentioned, how people value their time, how people value the time of their team. Like, I'm curious. There's different ways to think about that in your brain. Do you encourage people, or do you have a way that you like to help people think about the value of their time? I mean, their time is super valuable, period. But like, do you ever try to quantify it or help them figure out how to quantify it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's easy math too. You know your hourly rate, or you know
Yes.
the average hours you spend on a job if you flat rate, you know, your legal
Yep.
work. I mean, hourly rate doesn't have to be actually a billable hour, right?
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know how much you're charging on average per hour. You know how much your team is worth, and your margins for how much they can bill out for, and how much you pay them, like a paralegal,
Yep.
any contractors, right? You also know that technically your hourly rate, whether it's billable work or not, is your opportunity cost. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what I mentioned earlier, right? So let's
Yes.
say if on average the Clio report from last year said $253 an hour, and it varies by practice area, and it
Sure.
varies by your realization rate and your discount rate and what makes it on the invoice and what you missed with your time tracker. But let's
Yeah.
just say that you're not in the camp of discounting 70% or whatever it is from actual work to actual profit
Yeah.
or revenue. But what happens is, if you take that rate, let's say 253, and you have a
Uh-huh.
paralegal, you know, that's $100 off of that or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see the cost of outsourcing, and also you value the time wasting that happens with all these consultations that don't convert. We see that 59% of potential clients, for example, don't hire after a consultation. That is definitely leaving room for a lot of improvement, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It should be on the other side of 50% at the very least.
Yeah.
But what we know is that you can very easily calculate how many calls you're getting in a day, how much time you're spending, and then how many calls are coming in from paid advertising campaigns. So if you say you spend X amount on a campaign and you have this many calls, how many missed calls also is an important calculation, and voicemails where you
Uh-huh.
never reconnect with that person.
Mm-hmm.
And then how many clients actually come out of those campaigns. You can calculate your cost per client. You can calculate also, as Google has sort of trained us to do with AdWords and analytics, the multi-step conversion. So maybe they came through a campaign and then you retargeted them by showing them some content on Facebook, and then they finally call you. You know, they have a call with a receptionist service and they're put in touch. What are the touch points? You know, like what's that path that generally they take to convert? You know your cost, you know the value of a client, but you also know which stages in that conversion process you have to be involved in and which you don't. So let's say, like, and this is actually a really huge factor here in terms of calculating your cost. There are so many people who will say, and I see this on Facebook in these groups all the time, I'm sure you do too, I'm doing my own X, Y, or Z. I'm doing my own website. I'm building it from scratch. I'm building my own chatbot. I'm building my own YouTube channel and designing all the, you know, skins of my videos, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If you spend your time doing that, which at your expert rate is $253 an hour, but you could have paid a designer $50, maybe $75 an hour to do that for you, and probably 5 to 10 times faster than you learning
Yeah.
it and doing it
Yeah.
yourself, and arguably probably way better because they're trained to do that. I'm not saying anything bad about lawyers, just you're not trained as a designer. You're not trained as a coder, although that may be a fun project for you. It has an opportunity cost and draw on your time, right?
Yes.
So there's cost to me, and I can't hammer this enough, is not just like, you know, I'm getting paid. It's what could I be doing with my time? So instead of, if we're talking about the non-cost cost, instead of spending time, tooling around with Canva to make your own slide deck for a presentation, you could hire someone to do that for you. And then you spend the time networking with all the people who are friends of yours and finding out how you can drive the most attention to it by connecting with your community for that presentation, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you build the biggest audience? That's something that's much harder to outsource. So I'm not saying that you have to just spend all your time being a lawyer or that your paralegal is only suited to do paralegaling work, but like the people who you have on your team and you yourself have non-transferable skills. And are you spending your time utilizing those skills? And yeah, a lot of it's going to be lawyer skills, but some of it can be streamlined and other things can be, you're just using the right tools, you know, like if you use something like MailChimp, you may even remove the need for a designer because it comes with templates for you and you drop in your logo and your content and you're good, right? So how do you use like software and systems to cut down on the time, cut down on the expenses, cut down on even like the amount of staff that you need to get things done? And sure, maybe you'll write that email nurturing drip, but actually having that run instead of sending them out yourself, to me, makes a ton of sense. You don't need to be the one who's screening every single client. It should be the same questions every time. And if it's not, God help you for trying to calculate what your conversion is, because only when you systematize like those questions by practice area or whatever, that's what the forms will train you to do. That's what Smith AI will train you to do.
Yeah.
Only when you systematize it can you start to analyze it and can you start to delegate it, because you can't delegate anything that you haven't documented.
Right. So, okay. I love this idea we talked about at the beginning, you know, or maybe this is before we pushed record. I can't remember, but we were talking about at some point, you and I were talking about how important it is to have data, to have like tracking so that you can make decisions based on the data, not just hunches, based on facts, not feelings. And so everything you're just saying, you know, the reason I asked you about value and the value of time, because the hourly rate, to your point, super easy to figure out your hourly rate and maybe start to look at like how you're spending your time. But there's so much cost that you aren't taking into account. Like if you're making decisions to either go or not go with a service, maybe such as Smith AI, you have to like, I think I'm all about whatever decision makes sense for you, but you can't just make the decision if you don't have data. Like you have to understand why you're making the decision you're making. And so I think it's really important what you're talking about, I mean, the value of your time or just the cost of either going or not going with a decision needs to, you can't just think that you know. You actually need to look at like do some, even if it's just chicken scratch math, like to figure out.
And sometimes you can't know unless you have systems that play well with each other, right? So there's another big component here of the Google Analytics and the Tag Manager integration that we have with chat. There's also the friction of like switching systems and services and wanting to be with as a client and friend. Carol Williams, she's an immigration attorney in Florida, often says, I choose systems that I can grow into, because she doesn't want to switch all the time. There's a huge cost to switching and research and like setting up the integrations. Like that to me is not fun. Like I want to work. I don't want to just set up things so that I can work. There's so much time wasted in that. So if you pick the systems that you can grow with and that are constantly iterating, like look at your systems and see who's released features recently. Our team, honestly, we complain, this is laughable, to the engineering team because we have so many updates constantly that like my team can't even do all of the work that we want to do because we're busy just sharing with our community all the amazing features that we're adding. I mean, it's actually like a laughable, awesome problem to have. So we launched Facebook Messenger, for example. Maybe you're saying right now, I don't need Facebook Messenger, but what does it represent about our company that is appealing to you, which is that we are responsive? We built Facebook Messenger because our clients requested it. Every
Yeah.
single thing that we do, we build based on request and the volume of that request. That's why we have so many integrations. So the thing is, if you're looking at your systems, look at how they reduce work for you because they integrate with your, Clio or Lawmatics or Filevine or whatever, right? And that they are using your calendar so that you don't have a callback. Oh, I got the message that they're available on Thursday. What's the point? Just have your calendar and say, I see that attorney Joe is available at 2 p.m. Does that work for you? Yes, it does. Is this the good number to reach you? Or what's your Skype name or whatever, right? Oh, we charge $100 for the consultation. Can I take that payment from you? And we use your law pay invoice to collect that payment. Then we take that over the phone. You have peace of mind that this person's not going to no-show because they paid up front for it. And you have the ability in LawPay to maybe credit it to their first bill, and you are dialed in, right? Like that is a system that is repeatable. It can be handed off and it can be tracked. And that's really important. How many calls first came in as website visitors? How many calls are using your call rail number for your marketing campaign that you only are targeting to this specific geo, or it's only on your Facebook page, that phone number? They not have it any other way. Like that's what those systems can do for you. So then you can say, Smith AI answered this many calls, or Smith AI engaged with this many chats. And I paid for that website visitor through AdWords, and I have this conversion rate compared to my other campaigns. Like that is data. If you don't have that set up, that is well within reach. And then guess what? You make way better decisions, because what we see right now is people looking at their budgets during COVID and not knowing where to cut. And where does that come from? It comes from not having an evaluation process and an analytical process as a routine. Because if you did and you looked at your numbers weekly, you would know what we often talk about, even at Smith AI. We have, marketing arms, right? We know this, if we have to cut something, like this would be it. This is sort of on the chopping block, or this hasn't proven itself yet. Let's put a pause on trying to get that to prove itself right now, because we need to dial in our attention to the proven channels that bring us good business. And which are those? Often referrals. Right.
Yeah.
So how do you dial into that? How do you empower your community partners, and how do you target properly so that as you track down the funnel, you're also, and this is a value point, having the best calls and the most relevant calls from good campaigns go to a receptionist service. If you just have a whole lot of noise that you're funneling in, and I'm not talking about spam, right? Because we block those. But if you just have a lot of noise, then maybe something to do is to, have call recording set up, or to evaluate and look at these calls that are happening, and the call notes, the chat transcript, which is incredible. You can see the entire conversation and read through those, which can be great for building content for your website, for attracting more and better users based on what users, clients, who are going to be looking for the content that best relates to your practice areas, right? Like if people are coming in and you do a, criminal defense, and you focus on DUI, or you do personal injury, and someone is looking for, they mention car wrecks all the time in their chats, and your website has car accidents written all over it. Well, maybe you should be using the word car wrecks. So there's a lot of secondary information that we get that can also be fed back into the business.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. This is so good. This is, I don't know. I think I don't know why someone wouldn't use you. And maybe some people are, earlier when I was saying make a decision or not based on data, but you're right. If you don't have the data right now, it sounds like you guys are a good partner to start to get the data that they need, that they should be tracking. Like you guys can sort of help facilitate a lot of the things maybe they don't know how to do, but you know what they need to be thinking about and focused on. You know what they need to be tracking, and you can be a bit of a guide there.
Let's also, back up to the point where we say, if you're the only one who is doing intake, if you're the only one who is doing payment collection, I mean, let's even go there. Like, you have all of that weight on your shoulders. You don't have a prompt to set up systems because it's all up here in your brain, right? And without that prompt, you have variable results. But let me tell you something. If you use a receptionist service or live staffed chat or text answering and you give us directions, you better believe that our clients hold us accountable, and you will too. That is just a habit that forms instantly because you're paying for something and you want to see value out of it. And that's natural. That's a good response. We like that. But if you're doing it all yourself, there's way less accountability that we hold ourselves to personally, internally. If you set up these intake forms, if you set up directions with us, the reason that Smith AI clients are so successful and effective is because there's a dialogue up front, and that's why we do a free trial, because we know we want you to vet us and we want to go through 20 calls or 20 chats or both and say, what do these conversations really look like? Did you equip us to answer these things properly, or do we need more answers from you? Or are these things coming through, and how do we handle them because you didn't tell us, right? And how do you say, oh, I need you to actually redirect to, Attorney Melissa instead of Attorney Jay because she's changed her practice area, whatever. So we need to work through those. And then after the trial, you feel very confident, but also you've set up in that process probably new systems and processes. And what's critical is that you can hold us accountable in a way that I think is very empowering, especially for solo and small firms, because it's again, this habit building thing where if you have bills that are unpaid, you have a close personal relationship with a client and you don't want to ask them for money because listen, nobody wants to talk about money, especially with a client who they've established almost a friendship or camaraderie with, or it depends on the length of the engagement. You could feel even closer. So you don't want to make something that feels personal, transactional. All of a sudden, it's sort of an icky experience, on both sides. So what happens is people just don't ask for the money that they deserve and that they've earned, which is really upsetting to me. And it's not fair, right? And you build resentment with that client and your practice, and especially when you're putting in long hours. So hand off those to us too. Because I think one of the other things that we haven't touched on is the level of security and the NDAs that the receptionists sign and the confidential financial non-disclosure agreements that are way beyond what our competitors are doing. I mean, the savviness and the sort of attention to the role that the receptionists are playing with our staff is above and beyond. So you hand off that I have these 10 invoices that are unpaid and I need to collect this money. It's really outside of my comfort zone. Yeah, sure. We'll go do that. We'll use your business number to call the people so they see you on caller ID. We will say, we're calling to follow up on this invoice and handle that payment. We collect payment over the phone and we can plug it right into LawPay or whatever you're using. That to me is one of those like really dialed in approaches where you see Smith AI on all sides, and then that's where you get the value. And anyone who is using us for that sort of thing, we never see, oh, you're too expensive, because they look at us as extremely affordable. I mean, if you're going to pay a collections agency, you're talking 30 to 50% of the bill. If you're going to nurture leads and follow up and call those people you did the legal presentation to and call those web form fills right back and get that client as a result, then you're dialing in and you're not even paying attention to every single time that happens. Right. Because you handed us a system, right? Yeah. Like that's the most important thing.
Yeah. I think, the more I talk to you about this, and I've had this idea in my head for a while, and the reason I'm going to share this is because if I ever do this, you're the kind of person, honestly, but like there's a company behind you, or you're behind a company, whichever way you want to look at it. But a company is made up of humans, right? That would fit into this. There's this idea that I have that I want to create some sort of alliance for law firm owners, meaning like almost like they're trusted parties that like if they're a part of this alliance, you can they have your back. They're not, you need to be engaged, but like if you are engaged with these people, they are client centric businesses. And
Right.
it feels like you guys fit that. There's not, to be totally honest, there's not a ton of them out there that like you can almost sniff it on
You
people when you
can.
talk to them.
You
And
can.
so
And your
like
brand is only as strong as those you recommend, right? You confer your trust in your brand when you have this curated group you're talking about.
Right. Like I could think, like I've said before, I think on the podcast, how much I really appreciate Core Solutions Group, which is an accountant that's specifically for law firm owners, that she is super client centric around, she has their best interest and it's what drives her. And it feels very similar when I'm talking to you. Like you have their best interest and you handle such a hyper specific piece of their business and you can help them go really deep on it so that they become smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter within that piece of the business, but also they become smarter in general, like how their business is run is just smarter because of what you guys do. So I just think, I feel like lately I started having guests on. I didn't used to. And part of why I don't want to is because I feel like sometimes people have guests on just to have guests on and all this stuff gets promoted on people's podcasts and it drives me batty because like I genuinely care. It's like my channel and what goes out. And the people that I have on, I'm super careful about who I'm going to have on if I'm going to start to have guests because I don't just want services on this podcast that like you could use, maybe you should use, whatever. No, like if you're on this podcast, it's basically me saying like that you should absolutely look into this service or this person.
Exactly how I feel. We run the blog that way. We run our integration partners that way. We run, we have a curated list of even like phone system providers that we recommend and marketing agencies and consultants, right? Like there are wraparound hand-to-hand services where we say, hey, can you take care of this client who is used to being taken care of? Because I'm trusting you with this handoff.
Exactly.
And every time I make one of those recommendations, even honestly to recommend people to be in like certain Facebook groups that I know are well moderated and also full of caring members. Like, you and I don't take that lightly. And I think that there are a lot of people who do this well. They take the time that they need to serve these clients well, and they listen, right? They don't just talk at people, and they treat them as human beings. Like, and I think that that's one of the most beautiful things about working with solo and small law firms and other businesses is that we do get to work one-on-one with the owners, and there is that sense of control that if we have a discussion, that can actually be the decision maker on the phone, right? So that's a huge benefit that we have to being able to make changes quickly. And I think that's why we're even able to have this conversation today is that is within the means of people who are listening to this, right? Like you do have control. The question is, are you mentally there? Not is it functionally possible, right? And that's really the hurdle that we so often see. Yeah.
Well, okay. So will you come back? Yeah. Because my plan was, and we ran out of time because you could we could keep digging into Smith AI even more. But my plan was to actually ask you some questions about you and about your past, your journey, and sort of getting where you are now. Because I've looked at who you've worked for and what you've done in your past, and I really wanted to ask you questions about like who or what really lent itself to shaping you as you now with your past work, and just dig into the you as a person and not just Smith AI. So my question is, would you be willing to come back on for me to dig into that a little bit more?
Yes, I would love to.
And then that's where I have like rapid fire questions that are super fun and like just to let them get to know you even more, and sort of who's behind this educating for Smith AI. So
I love that. Absolutely.
Okay. I would love that too. Well, I'm glad we got through what we got through today. And so, yeah, I definitely think we should do part 2 where it's like Maddy Martin, the human behind your role.
Great. I love that title.
So we'll do that, but that's great. Well, if I ever get off my ass to actually create this alliance and like figure out what that looks like,
let's talk about that, because there are some people who I think, have that similar mindset, and also there are some really good models. Sarah Schaff, for example, at HeadNote, another legal payments provider, she created this amazing Silicon Valley group and has a really good model. So we're part of that, and I'd love to share more with you and connect you with her.
Sweet. Okay, that would be awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Maddy Martin. Thanks for giving us the lowdown with Smith AI, what it can do, but just really digging into not just signing up for the service, right? But like signing up and really engaging with it so that they get the most out of what you guys do and your purpose behind the product that you've set up.
You have a partner in us, and we would love to show you what we can do. You don't have to change anything or cancel any agreements. You can do the trial, and the nice thing about phone calls is that you can just forward them to us instead of wherever they're going now. It's pretty simple in the world of technology, right? Like you just put in a different phone number to answer your call.
Yes.
So
what's do you want to share? You mentioned that you were going to, I'll have something in the show notes that people can access and dig into from Smith AI. But then also, will you share, there's a code that you mentioned people could use
So a couple things. So I mentioned the Clio Legal Trends Report a lot, and I have a new infographic that we built around it. So I'm going to share that with you, and you can put that in the show notes. It's like this dynamic landing page. And then we also have the code Velocity100, which will get your listeners and peers and community $100 off their first month of service, in addition to the 20 calls and 20 chats of the free trial. So that is, plans start at $140 a month. So that chips into now almost 2 months. So hopefully that gets you at least through this period with COVID, and it's enough to try us out.
Okay, sweet. Yeah. No reason not to do it, people, but be willing to engage and get the most out of what they have to share and offer you guys. Thank you so much. Well, we'll do part 2.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
Hi, guys. It's me again. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this podcast, you probably understand that growth requires results, not just staying active. If you want to learn how to build your days around getting results, I'll show you how in this zero fluff class that I teach. Go to velocitywork.com/results for registration information. I cannot wait to see you there. If you want to hang out with us on social, come on over to Instagram. Our handle is velocity.work. And on Facebook, it's facebook.com/meetvelocitywork. Cheers, my friends, to real growth and a great life. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.